Reading is the foundation for lifelong learners. But why? In order to understand this, we must first understand how reading affects us. Hi, my name is Hannah McGonigal, and this semester I set out to find exactly that. Growing up, I was admittedly a bit of a bookworm. Some of my favorite titles were the Harry Potter series, the Percy Jackson series, the Hunger Games trilogy, the One and Only Ivan, and many other titles. If I wasn't at school, playing sports, spending time with friends or family, you would typically find my nose in a book. It got so bad that my mom would have to threaten to take my books away so that I would do my actual assigned homework. But because of this, on all of the standardized tests we took through all of our years in school, I typically scored significantly higher on the reading, writing, and spelling portions of the test. I've never been that great at math or science. I'm sure Jay Ross or Mrs. Mitchell can attest to that, given my chemistry and pre-calc experiences last year. Now, nonetheless, because of this, I set out to understand how reading affects us personally. According to the National Assessment of Education Progress, 32% of fourth graders and 24% of eighth graders aren't at a basic reading level. Fewer than 40% are proficient or advanced. But why is that? Now, through my research process across the semester, I tailored my research to understand how, between the elementary ages and birth, our reading development progresses. Through this, I spent 35 hours reading at Casa dei Bambini and occasionally at Baker Free Library, as well as researching how our mind works and what changes. And on top of this, I was more than fortunate enough to visit with a children's author who is also an elementary school teacher and a mother. So she's kind of got three things going for her there. But moving on, our physical development actually coincides with our reading development, and it starts much earlier than I thought, as I found out. Our reading and language development starts before birth. Mothers are actually encouraged to read to their children when they're pregnant because it allows the child to then be able to recognize their mother's voice better. But after birth, our reading and language development begins around 6 months. Parents are encouraged to surround their children with books at this age, even though they can't yet read, because they'll begin to feel comfortable touching, feeling, asking questions, and it boosts their imagination. Now, not only did it boost my imagination, but it boosted my vocabulary as well. I was being exposed to so many different authors that I was also then exposed to their vocabularies. And because of this, I learned the words that I might not have been able to know otherwise. Now, enough about me and more about us. Behind me are a few milestones that we're passing all before 4 years old without even knowing it. But let me summarize them for you. At 6 months old, we're vocal but not making words, and we can recognize our names and respond to them. At a year, we know a few words in context but can't yet form cohesive sentences. At 2 years, we can form at a year and a half, we still don't make any sense when we talk, but our vocabulary has expanded to 5 to 20 words. At 2 years, we know 1 to 3 word sentences, can recognize objects and name them, and our vocabulary has expanded to 150 to 300 words. At 3 years, we know about 1,000 words. We can understand past, present, future tenses, and our sentences begin to make a little bit more sense when we talk. At 4 years, this is when we enter the true pre-reading stage. We begin to recognize phonics, which are the different sounds that letters make. For example, the difference between a B or a P or a C. Now, our relationship with reading can be hindered very easily at this age, and once it is, it's very difficult to gain it back. A lot goes into children reading. What they're reading, why they're reading, and who they're reading with all matter. If children lose interest with their reading, they won't be able to get back into it at all. Now, they need to be interested in what they're reading in. If they're not interested in it, they're more than likely not getting everything they can out of it because they're not putting everything into it. As I said earlier, I spent 35 hours reading to children, and that can get pretty tough. If I brought in books that my kids knew nothing about, it would just be like paid daycare. I would just be reining them in every 5 minutes, trying to get them to pay attention to what I'm saying. Now, my very first session at CASA, I sat down and I took half the time with each of my kids and I asked them what they wanted to read, what they liked to learn about, what they read about at home, so that I could make sure I was appealing to them and they got the most out of my time that I spent with them. Now, why their reading matters too. If children begin to have a negative connotation with reading, like homework, or they have to do it before screen time or going outside, then they won't want to do it at all. And like I said, a relationship with reading at a younger age is very important as it builds lifelong learners. Now, these are all important, but in my personal opinion, who they're reading with is most important. If they're not with a trusted adult and they're with someone that makes them feel anxious or insecure, they'll feel uncomfortable asking questions. I mean, we all heard the phrase stranger danger growing up, so this does check out. For me, I noticed this firsthand. As I was going into CASA and Baker Free Library, it was really hard for the kids to engage with me because I was unfamiliar to them. I was a stranger. But going in, the more months that I spent there, I would begin to be greeted with high fives, fist bumps, I love you, I love your hair today, stuff like that. Just them being more comfortable with me. And alongside this, they started to engage with my reading time more. They started to ask me more questions. They started to stop me and make me reread them a passage because they liked it so much. Now, this is why reading builds lifelong learners. Before I ask you for questions today, I do want to leave you with a quote shared by Walt Disney himself. There is more treasure in books than in all the pirates' loot on Treasure's Island. Thank you. Mr. Sheehy?
When did you read to kids at CASA?
Every single even day. So I actually
It wasn't over the summer?
No, it wasn't over the summer. I had only sixth period on even days, so I would go in and I would read to them for about an hour and a half to 2 hours.
It's hard to get kids to sit still when you're reading.
Yes, alongside like reading for children and presentation, I learned how to control them a little bit better.
Also, Anna, I seem to recall that you were an excellent Algebra 2 student.
Thanks, Sheehy.